So I'm Stephen Mattisio. I'm the new Executive Director of the Knoxville Museum of Art. So I have been in Knoxville for just over a month now. We arrived in about mid-February, and I'm coming most recently from Houston, Texas. So I was the Director and Chief Curator of the Blaffer Art Museum at the University of Houston. And prior to this, I've largely been a curator through my career. And I've worked through Winnipeg, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Cincinnati, Ohio, and then most recently Houston. But originally I'm from Toronto, Canada. I chose to come to the KMA for multiple reasons. I'd lived in the Southeast a few years prior, and the sense of community, sort of gathering, and pride of place, I think really resonated for me. And so we were looking for an opportunity to come back into this region, to this part of the country. And I was also looking for a museum that wanted to connect the local with the national and the international. And I felt like the KMA has had a very strong track record of doing so. The bedrock of the mission is to represent and celebrate East Tennessee, but not as an endpoint, but very much as a bridge to find sort of cultural affinities with other parts of the country as well as internationally. You can look at the track record, the exhibition history of the KMA, and you can see that type of exhibition making here. And so I like the idea of being really grounded in the local, but striving to connect that local with a much broader community. So my typical day at the KMA is, I think, still taking form since I'm so new here that I think I'm trying to find what exactly the new normal looks like. But I can tell you a pretty typical day will involve a lot of meetings and discussions and conversations. I tell people that if I'm sitting at my computer for more than half the day, I'm probably not doing my job well. Because as the director of the KMA, I need to be the representative of this museum and of this organization in the community. So that means a lot of networking, of community building, of partnership negotiation. And so, a lot of it is that, really kind of overseeing the museum, but empowering our staff to do what they do best. And so I really need to kind of take the pulse and keep an oversight and just continue to sort of look for opportunities for the museum to grow and to, best embed ourselves into the community. So my favorite artist is an excellent question because I feel like my road to I have curated contemporary art through much of my career, but I can tell you when I first came to art, contemporary art was not my primary interest. So I grew up loving the Renaissance and Baroque. So if I tell you my favorite artist, it's Caravaggio, and it will and always will be, because I feel like his art was so dramatic and so gripping, and it just told such a powerful story that I feel like really embedded my love of art deep within my DNA. And I can tell you through my course of study and eventually into university, I started to develop a much greater appreciation for contemporary art. But I can tell you when I was first trying to reconcile what was happening in the Renaissance Baroque with the contemporary, they seemed worlds apart. But I can tell you through the course of my education and just studying more and more of modern and contemporary, you start to see the richness of ideas that really underpins that discourse. But I can tell you that when I visit a new city, I always want to kind of bridge art history and look at that span. So my favorite contemporary artist changes quite frequently. I think, if I had to name one right off the cuff, I would say Bill Viola is a video artist that I've really come to admire because he translates, I think, a lot of the sort of composition and some of the swelling kind of composition of Baroque into a new medium. And so I feel like he's one of my endearing contemporary arts. So if I had to name a specific art piece that continues to kind of resonate for me, I would say it was Umberto Buccioni's Unique Forms of Continuity in Space. And so that piece comes from the Italian Futurist movement, and it was something that I came across, I think, probably in high school. And Futurism is a very kind of intriguing and controversial movement because it very much it came out of Italy, and they wanted to kind of lay waste to all the giants and all the history that they felt was paralyzing modern and contemporary in Italy. So it comes with this very incendiary type of rhetoric. And I love this sculpture because it tries to capture a human running, but it wants to kind of loosen the static form of sculpture. So it's almost like a sculpture needs to live in space, but it can do so in a way that there's movement almost embedded into the form. So that's a sculpture that I love. Every time I see it, every time I think about it, it just speaks so much of that movement to me. So I'm still very new to the KMA and to Knoxville, but I would have to say my favorite exhibition is one that we currently have on view by Carmen Winnett, who's an artist who has really looked at stories of women's survival through kind of eras and contexts of domestic abuse and sort of the medical arena. And so a lot of it is kind of drawn upon the archive and found materials, assemblies and research that she has put together. But it's been a very moving and very kind of emotional experience for a lot of our visitors. It was recently reviewed by Burnaway, which is a source that looks at art in the Southeast. We've been getting a lot of very moving experiences. And for me, that's what, I want art that does not leave you indifferent. Either you love it or you hate it, but there's a strong emotional response to the work. And I feel like that exhibition, even though it's drawn from research and archive, which can sometimes be kind of dry vessels, this work is very emotional, it's very human. And so I'm really proud of what that brings into kind of the museum conversation.